The courtroom floated above a dying star, its walls made of black glass that reflected the faces of hundreds of alien races. The air was heavy, silent, waiting for the final words of judgment. At the center stood a man in broken armor, his wrists bound with glowing chains. His eyes hollow yet calm. His name was Elias Kane, and he was the last human alive across the galaxy. The name human was spoken like a curse 50 years ago. Humans were wiped out after a war that had burned across the stars. The Galactic Council had declared them a danger to all life, a violent, uncontrollable race. Now Elias stood as the last reminder of that dark time. The judge, in a towering insectoid with a crystal crown, spoke in a voice that echoed like thunder. Elias Kane, last of your kind, you are charged with war crimes, the destruction of planets and the murder of billions. You will be executed by stellar disintegration at the 9th solar rise, the crowd murmured. Some whispering, some jeering. Cameras floated in the air, recording every moment for the galaxy to see. Elias said nothing. His head was lowered, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear but from exhaustion. He had been running for years, hiding in forgotten moons, hunted like an animal, and now it was over. He closed his eyes, ready for death, but then a voice rose from the crowd, soft yet steady. I object. Everyone turned, confused. It came from a row of alien women dressed in gray mourning robes, their faces hidden beneath silver veils. There were 5 of them, each from a different world, different species, but united by one thing: loss. They were known in whispers as the widows of the war. Each had lost a husband to humanity's fire, and yet now they stood for a human. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge looked stunned, his crystal eyes flickering. State your reason, he demanded. The first widow, tall, with blue skin and eyes that shimmered like rain, stepped forward. My husband died during the war, yes, but not by human hands, she said. His last message to me carried one name, Elias Kane. He said this human saved him. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Another widow lifted her veil, revealing her scars, her trembling hands. My world burned, but I lived because of a human pilot who refused to fire, she said. His name was also Elias Kane. The judge slammed his staff. Silence. Lies from grief-struck women mean nothing before this court. But one by one, the widows stepped forward, their voices rising. Each told a different story, of a human soldier who spared them, who protected children, who defied orders to save innocent lives. And every time the name was the same, Elias Kane. The crowd grew restless. Was it possible that the last human was not a monster but a savior? Elias finally lifted his head, his voice low but clear. I didn't fight for the Council or for humanity, he said. I fought for life, any life that still had hope. The widows looked at him, their eyes filled with something the galaxy hadn't felt in years. Faith. The judge hesitated, unsure. This was not in the records, this was not in the law. Outside the courtroom, fleets gathered. Soldiers waited for the order to kill. The galaxy watched in silence. And somewhere deep in that endless void, something began to change. Because for the first time in 50 years, someone dared to believe that humanity still mattered. The chamber lights dimmed, the judge rose again, his voice trembling with cold anger. The sentence remains. The human dies. Guards move forward, energy spears glowing, but the widows didn't move. They formed a circle around Elias. Standing between him and death, the judge shouted for order. But the room was breaking apart, voices yelling, cameras flashing, the crowd dividing. And in that storm of chaos, Elias whispered quietly, even in death, humans can love. The words froze the galaxy. 5 widows stood against the most powerful court in existence, and the universe itself held its breath. Because maybe, just maybe, humanity's story wasn't over yet. The galaxy was still shaking after the trial. No one could believe what they had seen. 5 alien widows standing to protect a human. News waves spread faster than light, carrying the story of Elias Kane to every corner of the stars. Some called it madness. Others called it mercy. But for the widows, it was something much deeper. It was truth. They hid Elias in a broken cargo ship. Drifting between dead moons, the engines coughed smoke, and the lights flickered like dying candles. The widows sat around him in silence, their faces half lit by the glow of the control room. For the first time, Elias looked at them closely. Each one had eyes filled with sorrow, but also a strange light, like they carried something the galaxy had forgotten. The first widow spoke, her voice calm and cold. My name is Lyra, she said. I'm from the planet Corvex. where the sky burns red at night. She touched the scars on her arm. My husband died saving a colony, or so they told me. But then I found a message hidden inside his flight log. A voice human saying, "Tell Lyra we tried to stop the fire." Elias stared at her, his heart heavy. He didn't remember her husband, but he remembered that day, the flames, the screams, the order that he refused to follow. The second widow leaned forward, her voice trembling. "I am Sora of Velnar," she said. "I was a medic during the war. When the Battle of Cryon Gate ended, I found hundreds of soldiers dead. But one human pilot stayed behind to heal the wounded. He told me to run before the fleet arrived. His name was Elias Kane." Elias lowered his head, his memories flashing in fragments. He remembered her eyes, terrified yet full of life. He had stayed behind while his own commander ordered retreat. He had chosen mercy instead of victory, the third widow. A reptilian from the sands of Drath hissed softly. "My husband was part of the team that hunted you. Human. But when his ship crashed, you carried him through the storm to safety. He sent me a message before he died. The human saved me. Tell them he is not what they say." Silence filled the ship. Each widow carried a message, a voice, a truth that the galaxy had buried. 5 different planets, 5 different species, but one story. Elias Kane had saved their lives or the lives of those they loved. Elias clenched his fists, his voice breaking. "They erased it all," he said. "They made humans look like monsters so no one would question the Council's war. We never started it. We tried to stop it." Lyra looked at him with tears in her eyes. "They told us you destroyed cities, that you burned planets, that you killed children." Elias shook his head slowly. "We were fighting a war we didn't start. We were soldiers used like weapons. And when we refused to obey, they erased us." The widows exchanged glances. For the first time in years, they realized they had been living in a lie built by those who ruled them. Each of their husbands had died for a story that never existed. Sora stood and faced the others, her voice strong now. "Then we must tell the galaxy the truth if they killed humanity to hide something. We must uncover what it was." Elias looked at her, surprised by her courage. "But if you help me, you'll be hunted too," he said. Lyra smiled faintly, her blue eyes shining through the dim light. "They already took everything from us. Our homes, our families, our peace. We have nothing left to lose." The ship trembled as they passed through an asteroid field. A warning beeped on the console. "Incoming signal." Sora quickly turned off the lights. The room plunged into darkness. Outside, a patrol drone scanned the area, searching for the fugitives. They waited in silence, not breathing as the drone passed by. Elias felt his heartbeat slow when the scanner finally moved away. They were safe. For now, Lyra turned back to him. "There's something else you should know," she whispered. "All 5 of us received those messages on the same day, the same hour, the same minute." Elias froze. "That's impossible," he said softly. "No," Sora replied. "It means someone wanted us to find you, someone who knew you were still alive." The thought sent chills through them. If someone out there was still sending human messages, maybe the truth about humanity wasn't completely lost. Maybe others were alive, hidden, waiting. Elias looked out the window at the endless stars. Each one felt like a memory, like a promise, he whispered. Maybe humanity isn't gone after all. But before the moment could fade, the ship's alarm screamed again. An incoming fleet appeared on the radar. Dozens of council ships locking on their position. Lyra's hands flew over the controls. "They found us." Elias grabbed the command chair, shouting, "Hold tight!" The engines roared to life, the ship turned sharply. Diving into the storm of asteroids, the hunters followed. The galaxy had just witnessed its first rebellion in 50 years, and it had begun with 5 widows and the last human alive. The ship shook like it was alive, its metal skin screaming against the pull of gravity. Rocks spun through space, glowing red from the friction of speed. Blinding flashes of plasma cut through the dark as the Galactic Patrol fleet fired again and again. The widows worked together, silent but fast, each one knowing this chase could be their last. Lyra gripped the controls, sweat running down her blue skin. Sora shouted, "They're locking on!" Elias climbed into the co-pilot seat, his hands steady, his mind sharp. He hadn't flown in decades, but muscle memory returned like instinct. He pressed the thrusters hard, forcing the ship into a spin that threw everyone sideways. The patrol missiles exploded behind them, the shock wave shaking the hull. "Hold together," Elias muttered under his breath. Outside, the stars blurred into streaks of light. The ship dove into the dark edge of the void sector. No sane pilot went there. It was a region of collapsed suns, debris and frozen ghosts of dead ships. But to Elias, it was the only way out. Sora clutched her medical bag as sparks rained from the ceiling. "If we go in there, we won't come back out," she warned. Elias looked straight ahead, his eyes calm. "I died once already," he said softly. "I'm not afraid to do it again." The void swallowed them whole. Silence filled the cockpit. No stars. No light, only black mist swirling like smoke. The ship's sensors flickered and died. The navigation screen turned to static, Lyra whispered. "We've lost all signals," Elias replied. "Good. That means they can't find us either." Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Time didn't exist in the void. Elias stared out into the darkness, and for a moment, he saw something in a shadow moving through the mist. It wasn't a ship, it was something older, larger, breathing like a living storm. The sensors blinked red. Reading impossible numbers, Sora gasped. "That's no patrol. What is that?" Elias didn't answer, his face pale. He knew the stories. Ships that entered the void sometimes met something ancient, something that hated light. "Turn off the engines," Elias ordered quietly. "What?" Lyra looked at him, confused. "If we run, it'll chase us. Pretend we're dead," he said. One by one, the lights dimmed. The ship fell silent, drifting among the ghostly ruins. Outside, the shadow passed, massive, endless. A creature made of darkness and lightning. It drifted close, its tendrils brushing against their ship like cold smoke. Everyone froze, not even daring to breathe. Then slowly it moved on, disappearing back into the mist. The silence that followed felt heavier than fear. Finally, the engines hummed softly again. Lyra let out a shaky breath. That wasn't in any star chart. Elias stared out the window, whispering, "That's because humans found it first." The widows looked at him, shocked. "What do you mean?" Sora asked. Elias leaned back in his seat, his voice filled with exhaustion. "During the war, we explored the void. The Council sent us to test weapons that could bend gravity. But something was already here, watching. We called it the Sleeper. A creature born before stars existed. The Council ordered us to destroy it, but we couldn't. That's when they decided we were too dangerous to exist." The truth hung heavy in the air. The widows now understood, and the war wasn't about control or peace, it was about fear. The Council had tried to erase humanity because they had seen something they were not supposed to. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed from the console. Sora looked at the radar, and a signal, weak but real. "It's coming from deep inside the void," she said. "Coordinates locked. It's human." Elias's eyes widened. "That can't be," he whispered. "We were all destroyed." Lyra looked at him, her voice trembling. "Then who is calling for help?" Elias made his decision. "Set a course and we're going to find them." The widows exchanged nervous glances but nodded. The ship drifted deeper into the unknown, guided by a ghostly signal repeating the same message over and over. Elias Kane, humanity remembers. Hours passed until a faint light appeared ahead. A broken ship floating in darkness. Its hull carried the faded emblem of Earth's old fleet. The UNS Valor. Elias's heart stopped. "That was my ship," he said softly. As they approached, the message repeated again. "Clearer this time, Elias Kane. This is Captain Mira Holt. If you are hearing this, then you survived." "And so did we." The widow stared in disbelief. Could it be true? Could more humans have survived the extinction? But before they could celebrate, the radar screamed again. Dozens of red dots appeared. The Council fleet had found them. Lyra shouted, "They're closing fast." Elias clenched his fists, fire returning to his voice. "Then we'll lead them straight to the truth." The engines roared to life. The ship turned toward the wreck of the UNS Valor, racing through storms of debris and shadow behind them. The fleet followed, a wall of fire chasing ghosts. As the void trembled, Elias whispered under his breath, "If humanity still lives, then the galaxy is not ready for what comes next." The stars ahead flared bright and vanished into the storm. The battle for truth had just begun. The void finally began to fade, replaced by a pale silver glow from a nearby dying sun. The ship drifted into orbit above a planet that looked half dead. Its surface cracked, glowing faintly with rivers of molten dust. Lyra checked the readings. No life signs. No atmosphere, just ruins. Elias stared at the scanner, his eyes narrowing. "That's not a dead world," he said softly. "That's Valora 9, the place where humanity's final experiments took place." The widows exchanged confused glances. Sora frowned. Experiments? What kind of experiments? Elias didn't answer. Not yet. His memories were returning piece by piece, and every one of them felt heavier than the last. They landed near a mountain split open like a wound. The air was toxic, the ground scorched black. Elias stepped out first, his boots crunching on the ash-covered ground in the distance. Broken towers rose from the dust, half machine, half stone. They looked like grave markers from another age. This is where it ended, Elias whispered. Where humanity was erased, the widows followed, covering their faces with breathing masks. Lyra carried a light drone that scanned the ruins suddenly. It beeped and projected a faint hologram. A circular metal door buried under the rock. Symbols of Earth's old military fleet glowed faintly on its surface. Sora wiped the dust away and whispered, UNS Research Facility Project Ascendancy. Elias froze. He knew that name. That project had changed everything. He kneeled, running his fingers along the cold metal. This was humanity's greatest dream and its greatest sin, he said. The door creaked open, releasing a breath of stale air. They walked down long corridors lined with shattered screens and skeletons of old machines. Every step echoed like thunder in the emptiness. Finally, they reached a vast chamber filled with holographic pods. In the center stood a giant console covered in dust. Its screen still faintly glowing, Elias activated it, his fingers trembling as blue light filled the room. A voice spoke, soft, mechanical, human. Welcome to Ascendancy Archive. Access code required. Elias typed an old code burned into his memory. The screen flickered, then thousands of images appeared, soldiers, scientists, cities, and battles. And then the truth began to unfold. Lyra stepped closer, watching in silence as the recordings played. The archive showed human scientists building something called the Neural Unity Drive. It was a technology designed to link minds, to create peace between species through shared thoughts. But the Council saw it as a threat. They claimed humans were creating a weapon to control others. And when the humans refused to destroy their work, the Council declared war. Elias clenched his fists. They twisted our dream, he said. We wanted unity. They saw domination. Sora looked at the recordings, tears forming in her eyes. Her husband had died believing humanity wanted to enslave them. Now she saw the truth. It was the opposite. The hologram changed again, showing a meeting of the Council, alien leaders signing a secret order. The words were clear. Humanity must be eliminated. Their knowledge must be buried. Lyra covered her mouth in shock. They erased your entire species to hide their fear, she whispered. Elias nodded slowly, and they made sure no one would ever know. The widows looked around the chamber, walls covered with history that had been forgotten. For the first time, they realized they were standing in the tomb of an entire civilization. Sora whispered, the galaxy has been living a lie. Elias turned to her, his voice steady. Not anymore, we'll show them the truth. But before he could send the data, the ground trembled, the walls cracked. Alarm screamed. Lyra shouted, we're not alone! From the tunnels, metal figures emerged, drones, still active after all these years. Their red eyes blinked to life, scanning the intruders. Unauthorized presence detected, the machines hissed. Blasters lit up the dark, filling the chamber with chaos. Elias grabbed an old rifle from the wall. Aiming with perfect precision, he fired short bursts, covering the widows as they tried to download the data. Sora dragged Lyra behind a console as sparks rained down from the ceiling. One of the drones exploded, throwing debris across the room. Elias took a hit to the shoulder but didn't stop. Get the data. Go, he shouted. Lyra pressed the final command, and the archive core released a small glowing cube. The memory key. It contained everything. Proof of humanity's innocence, the Council's betrayal, the truth of the war. She handed it to Elias, her hands shaking. We have it, she cried. Elias smiled faintly through the pain. Then humanity lives again, he said. But before they could reach the exit, a drone fired. The blast hit Sora's leg. Sending her to the ground, Elias turned back, lifted her in his arms, and ran through the collapsing tunnel. Behind them, explosions tore the archive apart, burying centuries of secrets in flame. They burst through the exit as the ground split behind them. The ship waited above, its engines ready. Lyra pulled them aboard and they lifted off just as the mountain crumbled into dust. Through the window, the widows watched the ruins disappear. Sora clutched her leg in pain but smiled faintly. At least now, we know the truth, she said. Elias held the glowing memory key tightly. Truth is the one weapon the Council fears most, he whispered. The ship vanished into the stars once more, carrying not just fugitives, but the last truth of mankind. The ship drifted through endless darkness. Carrying the smell of smoke and metal, Elias sat in the co-pilot seat, clutching the glowing memory key. Every breath burned, his shoulder still bleeding from the last battle. Lyra wrapped a bandage around him, her hands trembling. "You should rest," she said softly. Elias shook his head, his eyes fixed on the stars. "Not until the galaxy knows what they did to us," he replied. The widows gathered around the table in the main cabin, the dim blue lights flickering on their faces. Sora's leg was injured, but her spirit wasn't. "We have the proof," she said. "The world needs to hear it." Elias nodded. Inserting the memory key into the ship's console, the screen filled with light, millions of data fragments. Hidden recordings, lost voices from the war one by one. The messages began to play. Voices of human soldiers, scientists, mothers, and children, all speaking from the past. "We didn't start this war," one voice said. "They turned our peace project into a weapon," said another. And then came the last recording. A voice Elias recognized instantly. It was Captain Mira Holt, his old commander. Her tone was calm but filled with pain. "If anyone hears this, know that humanity never wanted war. We wanted to connect the stars, not burn them. If we fall, remember this. Truth outlives even death." Silence filled the cabin. The widows looked at Elias, their eyes wet. Sora whispered, "Your people were trying to save us all." Elias nodded slowly. "And for that, we were erased." He opened the comms channel and began uploading fragments of the data to the old human satellites that still drifted around forgotten worlds. "Once this spreads," he said, "every planet will know." Lyra hesitated. "The Council will track us instantly." "I know," Elias replied. "But truth is like light. Once it shines, no darkness can hide it." They launched the broadcast. Across the galaxy, on every comlink, every station, every ship, the voices of dead humans began to play. Billions listened in silence as the truth unfolded. The recording spoke of mercy, courage, and sacrifice. The image of humanity began to change. The galaxy had been told that humans were monsters, but now they heard the voices of people who dreamed of peace. In the mining colonies, workers stopped their drills to listen. In warships, soldiers turned off their weapons. Even on the Council's homeworld, senators froze as the transmissions echoed through the Grand Hall. The truth was spreading faster than anyone could stop it, but not everyone was ready to believe. The Council ordered an emergency broadcast of their own. They called the transmissions false propaganda. They blamed the widows and declared them terrorists. They sent fleets to hunt them down, promising a bounty for Elias Kane, dead or alive. Meanwhile, on the ship, Sora's wound had worsened. She lay on a stretcher, pale but smiling faintly. "Don't stop now," she whispered. "They can kill us, but they can't kill the truth." Elias held her hand, his voice soft. "You saved me when you chose to believe. Sora." She smiled weakly. "Belief is the only thing stronger than fear." Lyra turned from the window, her voice shaking. "The signal's reaching every major system," she said. "Even the outer colonies are responding." Elias stood up, his eyes burning with determination. "Then the galaxy is waking up." Suddenly the radar screamed. Dozens of red dots appeared on a full Council fleet. Surrounding them, "They found us," Lyra said. Panic in her voice. Elias looked calm, almost peaceful. "Then we finish what we started," he said. He switched the broadcast to live mode. The camera lit up, showing his face to every screen across the galaxy. His voice was quiet, yet it echoed everywhere. "My name is Elias Kane, the last human alive," he said. "You were told we were monsters, but the truth is we were dreamers. We built bridges between worlds, but fear tore them down. We died trying to protect what made life worth living, hope." The fleet outside locked on, ready to fire, but billions were now watching. On thousands of worlds, people shouted, "Let him speak." The Council ships hesitated, their soldiers unsure. Elias looked at the widows one last time. "Whatever happens next," he said, "remember, this isn't my story anymore. It's ours." Then he sent the last transmission, the full archive of humanity, encrypted and sent to every corner of the galaxy. Every truth, every name, every sacrifice released for all to see. As the final upload finished, the Council's flagship fired. A beam of light tore through the darkness, striking their ship. The widows screamed as the control panels exploded, sparks flying. Elias pushed Lyra toward the escape pod. "Go," he shouted. "Keep the message alive." Lyra refused, tears streaming down her face. "Not without you." Elias smiled faintly. "Someone has to tell the story," he said. "Make them remember." The ship began to break apart, fire consuming the walls. Lyra hit the pod release, the door closed, and with a burst of light she was thrown into space. She watched helplessly as the main ship vanished in a storm of explosions. The light of the blast reflected in her tears, but across the galaxy the voice of Elias Kane continued to echo. Even after the fire faded, the message lived on. The humans were gone, yet their words had become eternal. For the first time in 50 years, the stars whispered the same truth. Humanity still mattered. The galaxy was no longer silent. For the first time in 50 years, every world, and from frozen moons to golden cities, whispered the same forbidden name. Elias Kane, the human who defied extinction, the man who told the truth. The Council tried to erase his message, shutting down satellites and blocking transmissions, but it was too late. The voice of humanity had already reached the stars. Miners, soldiers, and traitors replayed his words. Children asked their teachers, were humans really monsters? And no one could answer. In the chaos, Lyra and the remaining widows survived. Their small escape pod drifting near the outer rings of Velinara, a neutral world. Lyra's hands shook as she replayed the final moments of the broadcast. Elias's face appeared on the cracked screen, his voice steady and kind even as the fire closed in around him. "Truth is light," he had said, "and light cannot be killed." Sora wiped her eyes, whispering, "He gave everything for that light." They thought Elias was gone, but the galaxy wasn't done with his name yet. Soon, planets began to protest against the Council. Armies refused to fight. Even the Council's own soldiers started questioning their orders. The old order was breaking apart, and the truth was eating it from within. The Council, desperate and cornered, announced a final act. A public hearing called the Trial of Truth. They promised to prove once and for all that the human story was a lie. They called it justice, but everyone knew it was a show of power. And in a twist no one expected, a message arrived at the widow's ship. It was an encrypted signal, a voice Lyra thought she'd never hear again. "This is Elias Kane," it said. "Faint but alive. If you're hearing this, I'm still here and I'm going to the trial." The widows froze. Sora gasped, "He's alive?" Lyra's hands trembled. "He's going back to face them." Elias's voice continued. "They want the truth. Let's give it to them." The day of the trial came. A massive hall on the Council's capital world shone like crystal under the twin suns. Millions watched the broadcast across the galaxy. Inside the hall, Elias stood, alive, wounded, but unbroken. Chains wrapped around his wrists again. But this time he didn't look defeated. The Council speaker, a tall creature with silver horns and a voice like thunder, addressed the crowd. "Elias Kane, you are accused of spreading false propaganda, reigniting rebellion, and corrupting peace." Elias lifted his head. "I am accused of telling the truth," he said calmly. The crowd murmured, voices rising in unrest. The widows entered behind him, escorted by guards. Their faces hidden under mourning veils, the speaker pointed at them. "And you, accomplices of the human, will be judged as well." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "We are not accomplices," she said. "We are witnesses." The hall fell silent. Lyra pressed a small device on her wrist. Holographic screens filled the room, showing images from the memory key. The truth played for all to see. The Council's secret orders, the erased human transmissions, the hidden experiment. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Council members shifted nervously. Their faces pale, Elias turned to the audience. "You called us dangerous because we dreamed of unity," he said. "You feared what you didn't understand, so you destroyed us, but look around. After all these years, you still fear the same thing, not humans." "But the truth," the speaker slammed his staff. "Silence! You have no proof this is real." Elias looked at him, his eyes filled with fire. "Then explain why your signature is on the order of extinction," he said. The crowd erupted. Guards tried to push them back, but shouts filled the chamber. "Let him speak. End the lies." The speaker roared for silence, but it was too late. The truth was no longer a whisper, it was a storm. Suddenly, a bright flash tore through the crowd. A sniper's beam hit one of the widows. Sora fell to the ground, her veil burning. Lyra screamed. Rushing to her side, chaos exploded in the room. Guards shouting, people running. Elias grabbed Sora's hand, blood covering his fingers. Her voice was faint. "Don't let them silence you," she whispered. "Not now." Then her hand fell limp. Elias stood slowly, his chains glowing. His breath sharp and heavy, he turned toward the council speaker. "You killed Truth once before," he said. "But not this time." And then something strange happened. The chains on his wrists began to melt. The crowd gasped as his body shimmered with faint light. The implants he had from the old human experiments, they were reawakening. Energy pulsed through him, golden and alive. The human legacy, the neural unity drive, was activating through his own body. Around the hall, people began to feel it. Emotions linked, fear, hope, grief, all flowing together. Different species looked at each other and, for a moment, truly understood one another. No barriers, no hate, just shared feeling, Lyra whispered in awe. "He's connecting them, the way humans once tried to." The speaker stepped back, terrified. "What are you?" He shouted. Elias looked at him, his voice calm but powerful. "I am what you tried to destroy, the bridge between worlds." Outside, riots turned into revolutions. Fleets began turning their guns on the Council's warships. The galaxy was burning again, but this time it wasn't war, it was awakening. Elias fell to his knees, light fading from his body. Lyra caught him before he hit the ground. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He smiled weakly. "No," he said, "we did." As soldiers broke into the chamber, the speaker fled, but no one followed him. Because at that moment everyone was watching Elias Kane, the human who turned his execution into hope. Outside the hall, the stars shimmered brighter than before. The galaxy would never be the same again. The trial of truth had ended the age of silence, and even as Elias's strength faded, his legacy was already echoing through every world. The last human had become something far greater, the voice of all living things. The war that followed was not fought with weapons, it was fought with truth. Every world that once bowed to the Galactic Council began to rise. Protests turned into movements, and movements turned into revolutions. Elias Kane's name spread across the stars like fire through dry grass. He had become more than human. He had become a symbol. But while the galaxy changed, Elias was dying. His body, overloaded by the neural unity drive, could no longer hold together. Each heartbeat was a flash of light beneath his skin. He lay inside a quiet medical bay aboard a stolen cruiser. Lyra sat beside him, her hand resting on his around them. The other widows worked silently, watching the man who had changed everything. Outside the window, stars burned brighter than ever. News came in every hour. The council had fallen, its leaders captured or vanished. Worlds that once hated humanity now spoke the name with reverence. Children painted symbols of Earth on their walls. And across 1,000 systems, a new saying was born. "We remember the light of mankind." Elias opened his eyes weakly, his voice barely a whisper. "Did we win?" Lyra smiled through her tears. "You did more than win, Elias," she said. "You woke the galaxy." He tried to laugh, but his breath caught. "I never wanted to be a hero," he said softly. "You weren't," Lyra replied. "You were human, and that was enough." The ship drifted toward the ruins of Earth, now a dead planet covered in ice and silence. For 50 years, no one had dared to come near it. Now it was time to return. Lyra and the widows carried Elias to the surface, the cold wind cutting through their suits. They walked through cities frozen in time, broken towers, quiet streets, dust covering the dreams of an entire species. Elias looked around with tired eyes. "This was our home," he whispered. "And it will be again," Lyra said. They reached the old Unity Memorial, half buried under snow. It was a statue of hands reaching toward the sky, cracked and broken. Lyra cleared the snow and placed Elias at its base. He looked up at the sky, his eyes reflecting the faint glow of the stars. "I thought I'd die forgotten," he said. "You'll never be forgotten," Lyra whispered. "Because you gave the galaxy back its soul," Elias smiled faintly. "Then maybe humanity was worth remembering after all." The light inside him began to grow, soft and golden. His body shimmered like starlight. Lyra reached for him, tears falling. "Elias?" He looked at her one last time. "Don't mourn me," he said. "Promise me you'll keep building bridges, not walls." And then, his light exploded outward, gentle but endless. The widows shielded their eyes as the light spread across the horizon. It wasn't a weapon, it was warmth. Peace, life. The snow melted, the frozen trees began to bloom. The oceans shimmered with color again. Elias Kane's body faded into pure energy. And from that energy, Earth breathed once more. The widows stood in silence, their hearts breaking and healing at the same time. Above them, the stars seemed to pulse with new light. A message appeared on every ship, every world, every screen. A single line carried by the last signal from Elias Kane. Humanity is not gone, it is reborn in every act of kindness, in every spark of courage, and in every heart that chooses love over fear. Years passed. The galaxy changed slowly but surely. The Council was replaced by a new alliance, the Union of Living Worlds. Their first law was simple. No truth shall be buried again. On every world a monument was built showing a man looking up at the stars. Holding a small light in his hands, they called it the last light. Lyra and the remaining widows became ambassadors of peace. Traveling from world to world, they carried Elias's message wherever they went. Some called them saints, others called them dreamers. But they didn't care for titles. They cared for unity. One day Lyra returned to Earth alone. She stood before the Unity Memorial. Now restored and shining, the grass had grown again. Flowers bloomed where fire once burned. She placed her hand on the stone and whispered, "We kept your promise, Elias." The stars finally learned to live together. She looked up, and in the sky, a cluster of stars shimmered brighter than the rest. They formed the shape of a human hand reaching upward. Lyra smiled softly. "Goodbye, my friend," she said. "The galaxy remembers you." The wind carried her words across the hills, through the trees, and into the stars. And somewhere beyond time, a quiet voice whispered back, "Then humanity has done its part." The stars burned on, eternal, peaceful, alive. The last human was gone, but his light would never fade. Because as long as someone remembered, humanity still mattered.